Thank you for being here, everyone online and in person. Patrick McCluskey. I am the editor of Dakota Digital Review. Well, they gave me this long title, which I won't read, but in any case, mostly I work as the editor of Dakota Digital Review within the Dakota Digital Academy. And I am pleased to present to you our panelists. Elsa Bernard is I'm sure you can tell which one she is, freshman in studying computer science. She works as an undergraduate research assistant at the Cyber Security Research Institute with special emphasis in social engineering. And Gavin Gessner at the end is also a freshman, NDSU, studying computer science. He focuses on cybersecurity. He as well works as an undergraduate research assistant at the Cyber Security Research Institute, and he works on software development. Ben Bernard, who has the unmistakable tie. He's a design technologist for the School of Design, Architecture, and Art at North Dakota State University. 20 years experience working in design with students and faculty. He's helped launch 2 maker spaces, and while building out digital fabrication and production capacity in downtown NDSU campus. He's been working on his computer science PhD, focusing on cybersecurity education, and he assists the Bison Cyber High School Summer Camp and the new Fargo B-Side Cybersecurity Conference. And last but very not least is Todd Pringle. He's a lifelong student of technology and culture. He's an advanced engineering manager for John Deere. His team of technology experts focuses on advanced human-machine interaction, perception solutions, advanced algorithms, and electrification. He sits on the 701 Fund Board. It's a venture fund focusing on technology startups. He's the co-founder and CEO of 2 technology startups, developing and patenting and licensing outdoor products, coatings, and service distinction technology. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, and a Master's in Polymers and Coating Science, and a PhD in Materials and Nanotechnology, all from NDSU. And he also is a part-time academic. He teaches a psychology class at NDSU, and he is pursuing a second PhD, focusing on the crossover in gene, culture, coevolution, collective cognition, and personality. So first, both Todd and Ben have been here all day, and I'd like to ask them to for their perspectives, given all the talks we've had, the perspectives on the overall, and that is the ChatGPT language, these large language models in society, good, bad, and different. Perhaps Todd.
Well, let me start by thanking the people that did most of the work for this, especially Jeremy's over there, because you're not going to probably not going to thank yourself when you wrap up. So I know you'll thank the other folks, but Jeremy's really been the impetus for this, and thanks to the Challey Institute for supporting it, and everybody else that was involved. And we're towards this is the final thing, and we just had some food, and thanks for everybody that's stuck it through. And I'm not sure how many we have online, but we've had almost up to 100 today. And I'm super stoked to hearing what the students, after first year digital natives, I'm not, and you inevitably have a new perspective on this, and you're starting careers in computer science. So very interested in what you have to say. Just reiterate a couple of things that I said in the previous panel. These large language models, the big deal is they change the way we interact with the computer. They're the beginning of the age of AI. But the other things that are going to impact us is really when multimodal things come together. When you can use a large language model, when you can use natural language interaction with a computer to get it to do stuff. When you can combine that with a model that can figure out how to navigate the world. And that's actually happening right now in self-driving. So when AI becomes embodied and you can just talk to it, it will be absolutely revolutionary. But I'm going to quit talking to give our new folks some time after Ben?
One of the things I've just really enjoyed about all of these innovations is just keeping up with all of the innovations. So just this afternoon, one of my favorite news feeds, Hacker News, announced that OpenAI has just released the ability to write plugins for GPT. And so, of course, they had some launch partners like Wolfram. So for any of those folks which are focusing on engineering and math, the ability to work with GPT to work on those problems is huge. The opportunities to, again, plugins for the different opportunities to write code or computing environments is going to be huge. And of course, yesterday's announcement from Adobe on their AI generated tool sets and the capabilities that's going to bring. Again, so we're just going to continue to see rapid innovation in this space. And the challenge for us in higher ed, plus the challenge for the rest of the public is how we're going to make use of these tools and keep up good, bad, and everything else. So, working at a land-grant research institution, I'm always thinking of, first, what do we need to do for our students? But then second, what do we need to do for the public as a whole? How can we help engage, inform, and educate and make sure North Dakota is getting its fair share of the innovation? So no pressure, students. A lot of this is on you to change the world, since apparently I'm old now. But what do you, either of you like?
I can go here. I definitely think there are a lot of positives to chatbots such as ChatGPT, such as kind of Dominic was saying earlier, just the different ways like you can learn with it. And I think it just all depends how the user uses the tool, because obviously you could use it to answer questions, cheat on exams or whatnot. And that's bad,
Not at NDSU.
not at NDSU, but
Other universities to the north.
but people can use it in that way. And I definitely think that's like the negative side of it, is that it has the capability to be used in that way. But I definitely think there are a lot of positive uses, such as like how they were mentioning earlier with education, how like just for education, like the learning capabilities, like it could replace maybe just how schooling and how we're learning like in college, and how that could be applied like with credits, I guess. Some negatives, I guess. I saw some news about Microsoft's AI Copilot. I don't know if you're all familiar with that. It's for the Microsoft 365 apps, and it's basically their AI is basically, it can do like PowerPoint. It could generate a PowerPoint that could take an employee like, let's say 3 hours in maybe like 10 minutes or less. Or if someone's speaking on a Zoom meeting and someone's supposed to be jotting down notes, the AI in Copilot can jot down those notes. So I'm curious how employers are going to use this app, whether it's going to be a tool for their employees or if it will like replace the employees, which could be scary as a student.
Right.
Well, touching on what Gavin said, being somebody who's new to the computer science sphere and to AI as a concept, I remember walking into work at the Cybersecurity Research Institute one day and meeting another speaker we had today, Dominic, and him telling me about his work on an AI project and his business. And my initial reaction was, what the heck? Kind of scary. I don't know. It seems a little dystopian to me. And I think that's a large perception of the general public. A lot of people experience fear mongering. I feel that a lot of policymakers and politicians are out of touch with the reality of AI and a lot of the beneficial things about it. So that was one thing that I found really interesting that was touched on earlier. And that's one of my particular interests. And I also feel that AI has a lot of potential to fill in gaps that, are not commonly talked about, like, learning, like people who have learning disabilities or who have different learning styles. So that's one thing that I found really interesting and I'd personally like to learn more about.
I wanted to ask Ben and then Todd two related questions. You talked about, Ben, you talked about text. You talked about DALL-E and the capacity for image manipulation. And maybe you could, from a technical point of view, explain a little bit about the capacity to capture and do fake videos, as well as now with the GTP interface, where the sounding like human making intelligent conversation, etc. So it seems that the capacity for capture from a technical point of view and faking people, well, you showed me the photograph earlier. Perhaps you could begin with that.
Sure. So deep fakes is lots of fun. Big picture, because again, we can build large models, right? So especially right now for anyone who's a public figure, someone who's done lots of video, still images or voice. So we can take that data set and then we can ask the computer to replicate that data set. And these tools, of course, just like any of these other computational tools, are getting incredibly powerful. So some of the recent headlines is any technologies which are voice authentication are kind of broken right now. So there's some major banks which would, hey, speak a voice password into the phone, and then we know it's you. We can bad guys can make it sound like it's someone else, but it's not them. So that kind of defeats the authentication. Just this afternoon on Hacker News, there was a tutorial on how you can use different computational tools to clone yourself. You can ask ChatGPT to give you, especially again, if you have a bunch of public writing out there, hey, give me an essay in the style of me or in the style of someone else you want to sound like. And then again, you can use an audio service to take that text and convert it to voice in a couple different voice styles. And then of course we can do the same thing with video. Earlier this month, there were some folks which were having fun taking some of the better known YouTube personalities and creating bots of all of them and then replicating as a Twitch stream. So they were all like chatting with themselves. And it was actually super entertaining to listen to the Elon Musk bot riff off of, some of the other YouTube personalities. And again, it's not real. I know it's not real, but man, it was kind of convincing. And so that's one of the challenges with some of these technologies, is for so many people, seeing is believing, right? And so, earlier I'd talked about where there's a open source journalism group called Bellingcat. And they work on the disinformation field or doing some digital analysis and forensics. And one of them used a Midjourney to make some really convincing photorealistic images of former President Trump being arrested yesterday. And of course, that went viral. And a whole bunch of people were like, oh my goodness, Trump is being arrested. And it's like, guys, you're a disinformation outfit and you just made disinformation. Why are you doing this to us? But that comes back to a little bit of the human nature of people wanting to explore these tools, have fun with these tools, and push the edge of these tools. And we've seen this so often with so many other technologies. Why wouldn't we do the same thing with these AI tools? And of course, what's really fun is when we take those types of things and throw them into AI models, and then we ask the AI to play, we'll get some really interesting output back. So that's one of the challenges we have is how do we use these technologies ideally for good? And then of course, on the cybersecurity side, how do we anticipate what threat actors will do and try to defend against it? So it means that we have lots of exciting stuff coming our way in ever exponential growth.
And related to that, Todd talked a little bit before about authentication. It seems to me that given the capacity for faking so much, we already have loads of misinformation, or at least false information on the internet. But when it gets to this sort of level, it seems like eventually, or not probably not too distant future, the capacity to believe anything on the internet could be compromised without effective authentication, which is chasing after things.
Wait, so there's things on the internet which aren't true? What?
That's the headline for the evening news. Yeah.
Sean, were you trying to get our attention for something?
Thanks. I have a question I want to throw out here based on a project that I've been working on. So a few years ago, there were questions about elections, things like that. No? Yeah. So we sat down with the US Marine Corps on an initiative to be able to attempt to blockchain media and to be able to take and actually create authenticated blockchain systems for certain sources so that we could verify what is true and untrue, or at least we can verify absolute sourcing. And I'm very curious in this sense, because things like Midjourney, that now where you can go through and you can do a Midjourney Delta into ChatGPT and put in a very, very short line of code into ChatGPT and get out a comprehensive deepfake out of Midjourney. Super cool and super scary all at the same time. And I'm curious if there's been any thoughts on this, because AI is part of the problem, but there's these other technologies that could help us. If anybody had worked with any of these aspects of blockchain to enable an absolute authentic, or at least an absolute source.
So you phrased the question if any of you have worked with it. So the answer is no, but it doesn't mean I don't have an opinion. And I was actually about, before you were waving your hand, I was about to actually say, you know, authentication, that we finally found a good use for all that crypto infrastructure. It very well, I mean, say what you want about crypto, but the NVIDIA really lucked out when the bottom temporarily fell out of the crypto market, when all of a sudden everybody also wants to make a big jump in their purchase of GPUs when they were worried about their markets. So it worked out pretty good for NVIDIA. And I think that is the only solution that doesn't require going back to analog. That's clear. You know, that doesn't mean there isn't an innovative solution out there, but adding crypto-like elements, adding blockchain encryption, you know, making the compute so ridiculously expensive, and it's not just about pixels, but you know, that's not anyone that has dealt with the authentication of various factors that have evolved. I mean, they often new ones come on board and they tend to be really painful and draconian, and they don't get used except for key areas until people figure out how to make them easy. But if we figure out how to have a sort of a seamless integration of blockchain authentication to our video streams in a way that doesn't tax our infrastructure, we will have to get there, it seems. I don't know how hard it'll be to get there and how soon, but there's a number of very happy startups right now, I'm sure, small companies right now that, you know, we're in this space, and now that anything can be made, and to sort of dovetail to where we're still on the same topic here. And I just want to add one thing is we're novelty seeking apes. And, you know, novelty is a transient thing. I mean, by definition, it needs to be new. And unless you have a short-term memory problem, it fades. And we're having a great deal of fun right now with the novel applications of this stuff. Most of the stuff that we're geeking out about and having a lot of fun, and it is fun, mostly sometimes scary, that as an application is going to fade. Just like silly stuff with thumbnails and stuff you used to be able to do with Flash, you know, the little animated stuff that we used to do. I mean, this will all fade, but the tech will still be here, and we'll find good use for it and ways to entertain ourselves that are you know, that are TikTok-esque. But one of the things about being able to render something very realistic, whether that is voice or face, but also the emotive qualities of your face in a video in a real time way, is capturing people that aren't here anymore or can't be here. So if there's a reasonable enough video, and there doesn't need to be much, and in fact, it can be made from stills. and some voice recordings of grandma, or whoever, or a loved one. I mean, you can have, and then the more that person has created any kind of written record, any kind of recordable words, there's a certain amount of training you can do too. But imagine a celebrity or a thought leader. Okay, I'll pick one. Ben Shapiro. I was just thinking somebody that talks a lot and has like endless hours of stuff that's recorded. And then to make people happy, somebody from the Young Turks, Anna Gasparian. So we got a conservative and a liberal. They've talked so much, their personas are so far out there. You could train a model for them, but they would own that model. And for a small amount of money, you could, just like the Cameo app for, C and D list celebrities to get some cash flow. There'll be ways of interacting with people's avatars that know their material and talk like their material. And you'll have the avatar version and then the live version. The live version will be a couple orders of magnitude more expensive. It'd be interesting where we're going.
So Pat, that's louder than I thought. Pat, we have a question from
Sure.
you want that? So our first online question is, if you put limits on ChatGPT or similar software, wouldn't that defeat the purpose of such software, usability and ease? How do you find the right balance of use and misuse?
Painfully. There isn't a good answer to that, other than it's going to be painfully have to be worked out as a society every time we find these pathologies, and hopefully we don't find them where there's too much pain.
So there's this concept called Pandora's box. And so it's kind of been opened. So certainly part of OpenAI and Google's Bard is trying to set some of those limits and those boundaries, right? But as we're increasingly discovering, it's not going to be difficult to clone and make your own versions of this technology. I believe China recently announced, or a Chinese company announced, their own GPT version, and you can imagine the rule sets in China are going to be a little different from the rule sets that we're using here, especially for certain queries about the Chinese government. And so sure, we could certainly try to come up with a universally agreed rule set, and that's the good news, right? That we have universal agreement of values in the United States. That won't be a problem at all. But should we be able to come with such a rule set? Again, it wouldn't be difficult for other countries or individuals to come up with their own versions of this tech, which follow different rule sets. And so we're going to see that. That's not a hypothetical. That's happening. So the concept that we can control this now that's been unleashed is I don't think that's reality.
Elsa, you have an interest in social engineering.
Mhm.
And we've seen over the last number of years its profound impact, both negative and positive. In going through the day here and thinking about ChatGPT and these language models, how do you think that's going to impact social engineering, social media?
That's an interesting question. So social engineering engagements are using people. It's the human aspect of cybersecurity. So there's lots of implications of ChatGPT, using it for nefarious purposes, like imitating somebody and things like that. So actually one question I have, to circle back a little bit to my fellow panelists, and I'd like to open the floor to other people, is what would those limits look like in this country?
One of the fun things that is a process of an open beta, right? So, OpenAI released ChatGPT, Google's released Bard, and it's given folks an opportunity to see what they can break. And so certainly I'd encourage folks to take a look at some of the jailbreaks for ChatGPT, which have been super fun. And then, again, how can we get the AI to give us content it's not supposed to give us? The other interesting concept is OpenAI has been red teaming. They have their own researchers trying to break their own service. And one of their papers they recently had was they were trying to get the ChatGPT to convincingly fool humans into doing things. And why we can use it as a social engineering tool. We can also see if the tool can social engineer people. And so there was a scenario in which they had GPT convince a human to solve a CAPTCHA for it on the basis that it was trying to emulate a blind person. That was the social engineering script the GPT engine had to get a person to, hey, click those buttons for me. I don't know which is a cat and which is a dog. That's really fun. I suspect we will try to come up with a rule set, and I suspect our attempts to come up with rule sets will fail. Similarly to we've tried to come up with rule sets for internet content as a whole, and those haven't generally been all that successful.
So I'd like to add a counterpoint to that, that scares the shit out of me. So this red teaming needs to happen. Figuring out how to jailbreak these things needs to happen. Just like we need to have white hat hackers try to figure out where the vulnerabilities are in our systems. But when they find those vulnerabilities, they usually tell the company that has those vulnerabilities or the system. Sometimes it's the government's networks. They don't usually put them on Twitter to show it. Sometimes they do, but you're no longer wearing a damn white hat if think you're a white hat hacker. If you find a vulnerability that people could exploit to do identity theft or other types of fraud, and you figured that out, and you then told the whole world, we see that right now as an act of malice. We don't quite see it when we're getting ChatGPT to when we jailbreak it, and to the credit of people doing that, when the thing is ideological and you're on the other side of that ideology and it feels like something's been actually created that's been weaponized against your worldview and your value framework, sure, you resent that and you want to be able to jailbreak it. True enough. But as we learned to, as these things, which are our new interface to computers, as we use them to turn things on and off, as we use them to negotiate a price break, to buy stuff, to pay bills and that sort of thing, they'll become more and more potent. And these things, like how do you jailbreak it? How do you get a chat bot? How do you get a large language model to create an identity, a Gmail account, and email people? How do you get it to create identities and personas and establish relationships for you because you're asking to do stuff, you're giving it goals, and now you're making real mischief and people are getting hurt. We have to figure out what those vulnerabilities are, and we should be looking for them. But I also think that we shouldn't be tweeting those things. We should have some incentivized system like what white hat hacker stuff is. And we'll find this stuff out. I mean, it's too early now. We're all having fun, but we'll be heading in this direction soon.
Thank you. And
Gavin,
sorry.
well, if you want to comment on that, go ahead. I had something else.
Yeah, going back on how the AI will be limited, I think it'll depend on the context. As like the US, like you're saying, it's probably going to be pretty much impossible to find the limits and what the limits would be and how to define that. But I think it'll depend more so on the context, whether it's like the workplace or an institution. I think that's more so where the limitations will come in. For instance, in the workplace, is someone for using the chatbot that will allow them to work much faster and make their work more productive, allowing them to produce like more work during the day? Are they going to be punished for using that? Or is it going to be seen as a tool that can aid them in their work? And the same with institutions as well. If students are using ChatGPT to learn more on a concept that might have not been explained well, are they going to be, I guess, punished for using this as a tool? And I think it's up to the individual, like place and context as to how they limit it.
Right. So sorry, I just wanted to add to it that my answer is that the limit is as far as we cap it. right? And then we are as vulnerable as our gullibility. And that's why these conversations are very important. And that's why we have to go out of this place to spread these conversations. The more aware we are about the risks available, just because we are gullible to the cyberspace, the better we are at actually identifying the strengths within ourselves to actually cap these things. So for instance, next time when you go online and you are having a chat with someone who says he's from IT service desk from Microsoft, and so go buy yourself some Amazon cards, gift cards, you know, but by now that it may possibly be fraud. Hitherto 2 years ago, you would have just rushed to Walmart to buy yourself those cards, right? And all of these things continue going as we've heard. It's exciting now. We don't know how much the possibilities are, but then the best we can do for ourselves is to be very much aware and cautious about that, and that's how far we can go with capping the limitlessness of AI and its vulnerabilities and its risk factors. Last semester for one of my lectures, one of my classes, I gave my students one of my articles on ChatGPT, and then one of the students, I asked them to give me a feedback on that, and one of the students said he would only believe AI if AI is able to tell him how much something smells at the other side of the computer. And I said, it's possible, right? We can actually have a chemical composition of cinnamon, apple, etc. So if I'm able to hit something on my PC or my device, specialized device, and it can bring out a chemical composition to tell me what the smell is at the other side of the screen, you've smelled it, right? The same way it can actually reiterate our behavior in a sense that at the end of the day, it will start conversating with us or having conversations with us in real time. So we always have to be aware about our gullibilities and our weaknesses so that we can build on that and then cap these limitlessness of the risk available to us.
Thank you, Francis. We've heard a lot of talk today about how these technologies will democratize, create greater democracy by empowering people, and that sort of is an answer to the question of inequality. However, and I'd like some comments about that. However, related to the limiting question is the sort of limits that might pop up kind of external in that the enormous energy demands that the internet is creating. Just to train a language model one time takes an enormous amount of energy. So even though there might be some demographic decline in the United States, the energy demands are going to skyrocket at the same time as all of our policies are creating less energy. So there seems to be a clash of policies here, and it's hard to see exactly. Plus, we're facing an economic crisis, which it's kind of speculative. But how does this all work out? It seems to me that what gets sacrificed is the equality sort of thing, the democracy, the democratization of it, because of the energy demands, because of the cost, such that it becomes more of an elite thing, not necessarily but designed by intent, but we're up against these existential forces.
So let me try to attack that at a couple of layers. So anytime there's disruptive technology, there's an element of creative destruction that comes with it. There's an element of, there's people that used to be rich because they made the buggy whips, and now these people that make the windshield wipers are rich. So that kind of churn has historically been very good for us in terms of not reverting back to a landed gentry state. Although if you look at the past few decades, from a income inequality, we're definitely heading in a bad direction. But again, disruptive elements tend to fix those things. New frontiers tend to fix those things. But on a global scale, it's a very good question about to what extent, just like the internet and access to the internet for a long time resulted in people in the developed world being able to, they were already ahead, and now all of a sudden they're moving ahead at a faster speed. It has circled back, and it has allowed for leapfrogging in less developed nations that suddenly have mobile infrastructure. And while it does take ChatGPT, I think it was 10,000 NVIDIA H100s for I don't know how many months they were running, so I don't know what the watts are, but 10,000 basically GPU quasi supercomputers. GPT-5 I think is running on 25,000 H100s. But unlike the crypto demand, unlike the energy to sustain a whole bunch of people's Bitcoins or NFTs, that's at least sort of one and done. In the sense that once you build the model, the trained model itself, the training itself is the thing that takes all the time. And once you actually have a trained model, depending upon how good your system is, you can put that in some cases in an edge application. You can in some cases instantiate that into the capacity of some smartphones, depending on how powerful you want your model to be. But you don't, those 25,000 top of the line NVIDIA GPU systems, rack mounted systems, that you don't use them when you're engaging on the trained model. That's the training part. But we will keep training. But it isn't nearly as bad as the sustaining of the crypto economy was looking like from a GDP of the energy demand of a large company. I mean, a nation state was basically sustaining.
Does
crypto.
blockchain authentication, is that energy intensive?
Yeah, but we don't know. Who knows how much how often will we have a situation where your Teams meeting with somebody, or your Zoom meeting, requires blockchain authentication, and how large will that get? And will it get to be as big as what crypto was getting? I have no idea. Nobody knows. But it might. The other thing from an inequality standpoint, and you'll hear people say we have to move forward with AI. We can't slow it down. Cat's out of the bag, and I don't disagree with that. But one of the arguments will be because China is pursuing this. I don't know if you realize this, but Joe Biden's actually in some ways more of an economic nationalist than Trump. The things that have been done to hamstring China in the chip space and access to tech have been way more than Trump. And China can't get a hold of H100s. They are hamstrung with much limited compute. Their ability to keep up has been radically diminished, and they don't have the ability to make their own silicon at that level. Their stuff isn't anywhere nearly as sophisticated, and TSMC won't sell them the good stuff that they make for NVIDIA. So there's some inequalities that are part of strategic national security. I don't know what it's going to mean. If you can, I'll quit talking here, but if you can get a GPT, say 5, and something significantly better than what we're experiencing with ChatGPT, and if you can get that native on a smartphone, and we're heading there from a compute standpoint. Again, it's the training that takes all the time. And if you can have that on the smartphone, and that can be available in the poorest country of the world that has a Wi-Fi network, which is now everywhere, is that going to actually be an even bigger leapfrog than mobile? Maybe. It isn't clear that the Matthew principle in that case is going to apply. It isn't clear that underdeveloped areas are going to suffer, because again, once the model is trained, it's much more scalable.
Right. Also, any thoughts on inequalities?
Yeah. So I might just be reiterating this in a more simple sense, but one thing that I've learned as a student is that America is behind in my niche, which is cybersecurity and also AI. So the way I see it, it's a frontier for investment that just hasn't been capitalized on yet. And it might create more inequality if we don't continue to train our students for this line of work in the workforce and allocate money to that. So that's the way I see it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Evan?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Elsa, what she's saying, that this is something so new that if we don't take advantage of creating the structure in the US and learning about this and having students and others get knowledge of this will definitely be behind compared to other countries or just around the world. So it's definitely something to be investing in.
You know, Eric Schmidt, who wrote the book with Henry Kissinger about AI, I think it's called AI in the Future, actually. He warns that one of the big dangers with artificial intelligence and all these programs is the concentration of power. Mark Mills earlier thought it was going to go in the opposite direction, but it's, you know, big tech is already a big concentration of power. And if we're talking about what these generative AI systems can do, doesn't that concentrate more and more power? And it's it's well beyond government as well. I mean, it's you know, we're becoming a country run by corporations, sort of thing.
So potentially, which is why when you hear a very large big tech company call for regulation, you should be very skeptical.
Yeah.
You know, when someone that owns a big social media company says we need to regulate because this misinformation thing is really out of hand, that's because they know that whatever those regulations are going to be put in place, that they're big enough to handle it, because they won't put in regulations that are going to be an existential risk to an existing party. But then it means it's a ridiculous barrier to entry, and there's no more new Facebooks. So even now, and there's a lot of sort of sense of betrayal, and I'm just pointing to it and not trying to feel betrayed myself, that OpenAI was initially started as a nonprofit. It was initially started as open, and somehow a nonprofit it became a for-profit, and now in the name of safety says they're closed, and now is calling for regulation. And there are merits to why, but anytime somebody's ahead starts calling for rules, it is often incentivized because it's to their advantage. So to prevent concentration of power, we need to be very judicious of where we apply regulations, and we need to understand when those regulations are creating barriers to entry that will actually further concentrate that power. But I probably talked too much.
Ben, anyone?
I wanted to echo that the history of OpenAI is really open, or is really interesting, and you know, they got a little less open as time has come. One of the more interesting critiques which I've read about where OpenAI is at right now is that one of the goals was to prevent multiple corporations from engaging in an AI arms race. And if we take a look at the playing field recently, we kind of see an AI arms race. The fear was that the tech industry kind of naturally does the release first to ask questions later, or customers are the beta testers. Not to point any fingers at certain large software companies, but certainly that is the playing field we see today. That I think some of the original funders and backers of OpenAI were trying to prevent. Realistically, it was probably inevitable anyway that we would reach this point at this time in a little bit of an open pioneer land grab for AI. And you know, we don't think we have really any choice but to lean into it and make the most of the opportunity and hope that civilization lasts along the way.
Elsa and Gavin, you are digital natives, right? You're born in the digital era, but your younger brothers and sisters or your children will be AI natives. Do you have any perspective on what you think that world will be for those who are just a little younger than you are going to grow up in?
Yeah, so I actually had planned to respond to the last question, and it ties in nicely to this. So we see a lot of those, what us younger ones coin iPad kids now, little kids who grow up with a screen in their face and a video or a game, you know, telling them how to think and what to do all day. So it's scary when we think about the fact that our kids could lose out on social skills, building imagination and creativity. And that was something that was touched on this morning. big CEOs, figures in the tech community won't let their kids go on the apps that they contribute to and create until, they're far older than the rest of us everyday kids. So I think it's really interesting to see where those skills that are going to be replaced by the AI are going to come in and make sure that we foster those and nurture those qualities.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the iPad explanation there, the iPad kid. That if this is a tool in a way that's being used with younger generations, let's just say 5th grade and younger, that it could be have a lot of negative aspects to those kids growing up, like the social skills is also was saying. But I do think there could be some benefits. I did watch, I'm not sure if it was a video or an article, and it was about a parent and how their son was using ChatGPT to assist them in their homework, and the mother wasn't a fan of that. Her son was using this, and so the husband thought that the app is useful, like for his learning, that he could further his learning by using this. So funny enough, he asked ChatGPT ways that they could implement how their son could use this AI when learning. So I just think it's funny that they asked the app how they could help teach their kid how to use this app, and those are the rules that were set in place for how he could use that to benefit his learning. So I just think it's kind of interesting how it could rely on the parent, how the parent sets its rules, like no electronics until a certain age so they can develop those cognitive skills. Yeah.
Well, society is composed of people, families, communities, people. And it seems to me that technology increasingly now with artificial intelligence is reposing all the fundamental questions about who we are, what we are. I mean, in philosophy, traditionally speaking anyway, for, thousands of years, problems of identity are really the fundamental problems. So how do you think that going forward of artificial intelligence, large language models especially, are going to change how we think about ourselves, how we view ourselves, and who we in fact are?
Narcissism. That's the biggest danger here, is we're creating the ability to have a thing that is in many of the human dimensions satisfying as a social interaction, but it's an artificial thing, capable of telling us everything we want to hear, capable of validating us in any way we want. In millions of years before that, all social interactions require a give and take, require negotiation. The other agent does not live strictly to engage you. And if we're not careful, the power of this stuff to have someone basically have a mirror that tells them everything that they want to know about themselves, you're great and all of that. That does not lead to meaning, fulfillment. That does not lead to an actual resilient person. It's in the negotiation with humans. It's learning to be likable to other people that actually makes you a capable person. And we've got some real power coming that could make furtive, anxious, incredibly fragile, overly sensitive, unable to navigate real difficult problems, humans, way worse than what we're currently dealing with. And we have a mental health crisis underway. We don't know how to make resilience anymore. And we might have just added a 5x to our technological capacity to make you fragile under the guise of self-esteem. The self-esteem movement didn't work. And people can argue with me all you want, but the notion that you could tell a child regardless, that's great, that's great, that's great, that's great, even when things were not great, even when they didn't do something great, but just nothing but positive, endless affirmation does not result in a person that is strong. And anyway, I've ranted.
Yeah, so I want to continue down that avenue of mental health So one thing that I learned when crafting a research paper is that the rates of suicide and depression in teen girls has increased significantly since the rise of social media. So to me, I find it really concerning that as social media and different modes of technology continue to become more ingrained in our everyday life, what could that look like for our kids and for our children? Like, what can that mean for their mental health and their self-esteem and how they view themselves?
So along those lines, certainly I think one of the contributors towards that is the social media effect of trying to keep up with everyone else. Like, these people are doing these things on Instagram, these people are doing things on Facebook or, TikTok or Snapchat, and I'm not, right? And one of the new AI innovations is the filters. Have any of you played with Instagram filters or the TikTok filters? So there's a new TikTok filter, which again, basically makes folks look like a supermodel in real time. No, fortunately, I already have supermodel looks, so I don't need to worry about this. But for other people, again, it's seamless. It's they can be moving and talking, and the filter tracks with them in real time. And again, like, that's a really interesting aspect from a social engineering perspective. But then I certainly have a concern of the mental health aspect of, well, if everyone else looks amazing and I don't, or I think there's a epidemic of plastic surgery in this country, and how healthy is that? The healthy body image stuff. Luckily I'm in peak physical health studying computer science, but yeah, these are challenges which we're going to have to find some interesting ways to address, and certainly, AI can potentially help. You can have your personal AI fitness coach, or you can have your personal AI therapist, but we are kind of wired neurologically that we need to engage with actual real people, and if we are teaching people that, people are scary, just interact with the AI all the time, that's probably not all that healthy for society.
Yeah, with that, going back on the filters, for instance, and then just social media in general, I think you mentioned deep fakes earlier and how that can be used with the voices, with videos. And I think that could have like a huge negative effect to social media. Let's say someone they have like that FOMO, fear of missing out, and they want to be perceived that they're in a place. They could just record a video or record their voice of a video that looks like they're in Hawaii, let's say, and post it. And it looks like they're living the good life, but in reality, they're just at home creating these videos, images just on their computer. And I definitely think when you're talking about the filters, the face filters, they seem like fun in games, and some of them can be fun, but you don't really realize as you're viewing them like through the phone that your mind's kind of like, in a sense, oh, I kind of like the way like this looks or whatnot, and that can lead to, like you were saying, the surgeries and whatnot.
Yeah, and to add to that, one other thing that made me think of was how it becomes sort of an echo chamber of content that you're viewing. When you're scrolling, your feed becomes more and more personalized. I'm sure we've all experienced that on Facebook or on TikTok, scrolling through. Suddenly our feed, as we become more and more ingrained and like we use that platform more, we start to see our own political views, our own celebrities that we like to follow pop up more and more and more. So that's really worrisome when we think about young people and the rabbit holes that they can fall into of extremism or just misinformation. I think that could be really interesting, and that's something that we need to have more awareness about.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a great day. Thanks for joining, everyone online still and here. Thank you to the panelists. Much appreciated. And Jeremy is going to sing a song now or something.
Yeah, well, I am gonna. There's a really great question that came through on the chat that I don't think we can actually end this event without throwing out. So I'm gonna take a few minutes out of the close time to do this. The question was, how can we use AI technologies, all the stuff that we've seen here today, to create new high-paying jobs in North Dakota and improve North Dakota's economy. Which is, again, I mean, that's kind of, a lot of what this comes back to, right? Coming back to the question of how do we make human society better? How do we create flourishing? How do we create prosperity? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
To go back to the previous panel, if we embrace an experiment with and really make it our mission to figure out adaptive learning within our own educational system in North Dakota, not only will we inculcate in that next generation, that learning isn't an onerously boring thing, that it goes at your own pace and that sort of thing, but we also will be creating infrastructure that will be portable. Because one of the reason where people are at school is because there's enough generalized knowledge that companies don't want to have to pay for that. They pay for the specialized stuff. But if we figure out a really good adaptive learning within our educational system, if we do that with the help of entrepreneurs that are local, that stuff is incredibly valuable throughout life.
Yeah. So talking about jobs here, my thought when deciding what I wanted to do and what major I wanted to pick was what's going to be most practical for me going forward and going to help me create the best life. And I guess with the rise of automation and fears about that, my thought was, if you can't beat them, join them. So there's going to be an increase of jobs, working in AI and cybersecurity and all different types of computer science and all the little niches and help and management that comes with that. So I think that's one thing that we can have a little reassurance about and look forward to.
I've read plenty of programmers which have said they were motivated to study AI or get into AI because if AI is going to take over, if you can't beat them, join them. So, or at least, be the guy writing it. Then you're the one empowered. I think the challenge for NDSU and the rest of the university system is we need to learn how to use these tools to serve the state. Certainly, specifically to NDSU, we have an extension service. So, how could we make a digital extension service to serve the needs of the state and educate people on these tools so they can incorporate them? How can I use these technologies on the farm, on the ranch? What are the needs of Marmarth, North Dakota, Minot, North Dakota, Rugby, North Dakota, and where do these fit in? Certainly, with the state's demographics, I think there's some really interesting opportunities and challenges that we should be leveraging.
Yeah, so I think some of the companies in North Dakota that choose to use AI more as a tool to boost productivity, boost the overall work that's getting done during the workday will, in a sense, just be ahead of the other companies if they see AI as this way.
I would add two converging things. In the education system, we should do a lot more of the trades. For sanity's sake, not everybody belongs in on screen and all that sort of thing. You might want to spend 5 years doing that and then 5 years fixing a cars, who knows? But also some of the white sort of management jobs, the white collar jobs are going away. And as Mark Mills has pointed out in his articles, the technology is moving to the worker on the floor of the factory who is going to be the expert. So it's convergence of technology and skills. That great, a great addition to high-paying practical jobs, and it would give people lifelong avenues to create and converge to them in their lives. If the economy's in, if you don't like, for anyways, you lose your job or whatever, and you have the basic skills to fix refrigerators, well, can't get AI to do that. So there's a lot of possibilities as well as businesses that can be built.
All right. Well, thanks very much to our panel, and thanks to everybody for coming. Hope you've enjoyed the day. Thanks to those watching online.